Tonight, taking it to the top, the United Nations Security Council set to address concerns over Russia's military buildup, threatening an invasion of Ukraine.
We're prepared to address our concerns at the diplomatic table, but it cannot be done on the battlefield.
Increasing tensions around the globe, even as North Korea fires off another missile test. And narrowing the search. Lawmakers speak out over potential nominees for the highest court in the land.
I do see putting a black woman on the court, making the court more like America.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. A rare public confrontation on the world stage between U.S. and Russia. Good evening and welcome to Faith Nation in Washington, D.C. I'm Jenna Browder. That tense moment happening at an open session of the UN Security Council called to discuss Russia's troop buildup on the Ukrainian border. The CBN News national security correspondent Caitlin Burke has our top story tonight. Caitlin?
Jenna, the unusual back and forth started when Russia's ambassador accused the United States of whipping up hysteria regarding Moscow's troop deployments. America's ambassador responded by condemning Russia's use of threats and military escalation to strong-arm the international community.
The discussions about a threat of war is provocative in and of itself. You are almost calling for this. You want it to happen. You're waiting for it to happen, as if you want to make your words become a reality.
America's UN ambassador, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, firing back that the West and Ukraine are not the aggressors here.
This is the largest, hear me clearly, mobilization of troops in Europe in decades. And as we speak, Russia is sending even more forces and arms to join them.
Moscow insists the West wants to weaken Russia by creating tension with Ukraine and the rest of the world.
We do not think that this will help to bring this council together. Rather, we fully understand that the desire of our American colleagues to whip up hysterics regarding its own situations regarding the so-called Russian act of aggression. This is of great harm, this hysterica, to Ukraine itself.
You've heard from our Russian colleagues that we're calling for this meeting to make you all feel uncomfortable. Imagine how uncomfortable you would be if you had 100,000 troops sitting on your border in the way that these troops are sitting on the border with Ukraine.
Meanwhile, efforts underway in the Senate to pass a massive bipartisan sanctions bill to be used against Russia should it move on Ukraine.
It's to include a variety of elements, massive sanctions against the most significant Russian banks, crippling to their economy, meaningful in terms of consequences to the average Russian and their accounts and pensions, more lethal assistance to Ukraine, the ability to deal with Russia's sovereign debt, to look at sectoral elements of Russia's economy, which is largely an extracting economy on energy, to sanction its sovereign debt.
Statement following today's Security Council meeting, President Biden said the U.S. is prepared for every scenario, writing, quote, "If Russia is sincere about addressing our respective security concerns through dialogue, the United States and our allies and partners will continue to engage in good faith. If instead Russia chooses to walk away from diplomacy and attack Ukraine, Russia will bear the responsibility and will face swift and severe consequences." Jenna?
All right, Caitlin Burke, thank you. Meanwhile, new threats surfacing from North Korea tonight, the regime launching its most powerful ballistic missile in 5 years. These photos released by the regime show the Hwasong-12 missile in flight. The intermediate-range weapon is nuclear capable and has the ability to reach the U.S. territory of Guam. It's North Korea's 7th missile test this month. The White House says it's planning a response to the test to reassure allies in the region. Well, the search for the next Supreme Court justice causing strife between lawmakers. President Biden's promise to nominate a black woman to replace retiring Justice Stephen Breyer, exposing a potential rift between some Republicans. CBN's Brody Carter joins us with a closer look at what kind of confirmation fight could be in store. Brody?
Jenna, the president's pledge also appears to go against the current mood of the country. An ABC News poll out Sunday shows a majority of Americans believe Biden should consider all possible candidates. Less than a quarter think that he should only consider an African-American female.
And that person will be the first black woman ever nominated to the United States Supreme Court.
One Republican senator comparing the president's decision to affirmative action and how that could cause confirmation problems.
The irony is that the Supreme Court is at the very same time hearing cases about this sort of affirmative racial discrimination.
Yes.
And while adding someone who is the beneficiary of this sort of quote, the majority of the court may be saying writ large it's unconstitutional.
Fellow Republican Senator Lindsey Graham disagrees with Wicker.
Affirmative action is picking somebody not as well qualified for past wrongs. Michelle Childs is incredibly qualified. There's no affirmative action component if you pick her.
Graham referring to U.S. District Judge J. Michelle Childs of South Carolina, who is on the list of potential nominees as confirmed by the White House. Other frontrunners include Supreme Court Justice Leandra Kruger, a former Deputy Solicitor General, and Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson in the D.C. Circuit. And that list seems to grow daily.
I would note that there's a long history here. President Reagan promised the country he would nominate the country's first woman to serve on the court, and he did so. Former President Trump also promised to choose a woman just over a year ago, and there was no such complaint from the voices on the right who are speaking out now.
Maine Senator Susan Collins is calling the search clumsy and politicized. Nikki Haley, former governor of South Carolina, said in a tweet the court should nominate someone without the need for a race-gender litmus test. And we understand it's tainted by affirmative action. This debate really just pushes forward. New York law professor Gloria Brown Marshall says some Democrats are worried the credibility of the next justice will be tainted regardless of their skin color or gender. Next in the process, Mr. Biden is expected to meet with members of the Senate Judiciary Committee. That'll be tomorrow to seek advice on the imminent Supreme Court vacancy. Brody Carter, CBN News.
And here with us now is Nathan Gonzales, editor and publisher of Inside Elections. Nathan, good to have you with us this evening. Thank you so much for coming on. First off, what's your sense of this coming confirmation for a Supreme Court justice? Democrats want this to be done, very quickly. Do you think we're in for a battle on Capitol Hill like we saw over Brett Kavanaugh, or does that really depend on the vetting process and any potential skeletons in a candidate's closet?
Well, first of all, this is big news, right? I mean, we're talking about a lifetime appointment for the highest court in the land. And so this is big news. I think it's going to have muted political impact. But on the confirmation itself, I think that President Biden and the administration is going to try to use the blueprint, the speedy blueprint used by the Trump administration with Justice Amy Coney Barrett say, hey, Republicans were able to do it quickly. And we can do it as quickly if we need to. And so it's going to be a fight. These Supreme Court justices are important. I expect it to be partisan. Although when you look at Senators Manchin and Sinema, who have been a block to Biden's legislative agenda, they have supported all of his judicial nominees up to this point. And there are a few Republicans, such as Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, who have given Democratic presidents broad ability to nominate whatever judges they want, even if they don't agree with them ideologically. So I expect this judge to be confirmed whenever she is nominated.
Yeah. 3/4 of Americans think that the president should nominate the best candidate, according to that ABC poll, regardless of gender and race. Nathan, could this promise to nominate a black woman candidate backfire on President Biden?
I think it actually only backfires on President Biden if he doesn't nominate a black woman. I mean, he has promised to do so. There's never been a black woman on the court. There's at least 3 qualified women on the short list that's being talked about, and I think that the ramifications for him not fulfilling that promise and not living up to that expectations with the Democratic base is more real than a backlash for him, not coming into this as open-minded as what some people want. I mean, the bottom line is that most Republicans are going to oppose whomever he puts up, and most Democrats are going to be on board with whomever he puts up.
Yeah. The times we're living in, these partisan times. Nathan Gonzales with Inside Elections, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Coming up, as the world remembers the horrors of the Holocaust, why anti-Semitism is still alive and well, and what can be done to stop it. Welcome back. Well, as the world remembers the horrors of the Holocaust, just a few days from International Holocaust Remembrance Day, new signs of anti-Semitism creeping into daily life. Over the weekend, an act of vandalism in the nation's capital. Swastikas found on almost every column and wall at Washington's Union Station. Rabbi Abraham Cooper, an activist for Jewish and human rights around the world, seen here with some of the more than 150 Nazi symbols and profane messages. D.C. police say a homeless man has been arrested as a suspect. And Rabbi Cooper joins us now. We should mention he is the director of the Global Social Action Agenda for the Simon Wiesenthal Center. Rabbi Cooper, welcome. It's great to have you with us this evening. I just want to start off with, how you felt when you found those swastikas at D.C.'s Union Station this weekend.
Well, if the neo-Nazis or whoever else was involved in this wanted to shock and worry American Jews, they were very successful. That is really the nature of a hate crime. The actual damage is minimal. They're working on removing the swastikas, but the stain of what happened will remain. And of course, it also raises some fundamental questions about Union Station. It took whoever did this quite a while to go literally throughout the area to put those swastikas on. And when you combine it just in the last few days of a spate of anti-Semitic attacks, including the beating of a religious Jew in the West Rogers Park section of Chicago, 20 neo-Nazis and other neo-Nazis throughout in Orlando and other places in Florida marching on Saturday, we literally are seeing unfortunate anti-Semitic hate attacks, some of them violent, across the United States. Yeah. And seeing it right in our nation's capital is just really, it's depressing. And I would say for many people, it's also scary.
Yeah. Earlier this month, too, we saw an act of terror at the Texas synagogue. Rabbi, do crimes like this speak to an almost ingrained level of anti-Semitism in our culture and society today?
Well, I hope the answer to your question is no. I don't think that anti-Semitism is ingrained in American culture, although there are very committed people in many different, coming from different angles, to promote and embed anti-Semitism into the mainstream of our culture, with really the main vehicle, the platform, is social media. And that includes the Islamist terrorists who came from London to Texas to attack the synagogue and take hostages. And it includes 24/7 activity of neo-Nazis, the far left, the far right. And so it's not to say that there are more bigots, anti-Semites, or racists today than there were a generation ago. It's that the availability, the marketing availability of social media is really very powerful. And the ability to influence young people across the board is, frankly, frightening.
What can be done to combat anti-Semitism here in the States and around the world?
Well, first of all, here in the States is to understand for our Christian neighbors and other neighbors in the U.S. to know that it's been actually 4 decades where America's synagogues, Jewish day schools, Jewish community centers have had to be, serious security, hardening of targets for 4 decades, spending hundreds of billions of dollars just to exercise our constitutional rights. And we didn't make a big deal over it. We're not interested in becoming, on a list of victims, of being involved with victimhood. But I think a sense of solidarity from our neighbors is extremely important. Secondly, whatever our political views, we have to give full funding to the police. They can't protect our communities with smoke and mirrors. And third, there needs to be accountability on anti-Semitism wherever it comes from. When you have anti-Semites in different movements, including Linda Sarsour and elements of Black Lives Matter, and some people in elements of the far right, and you have conspiracy theories about COVID. You can go down a whole checklist. We need people who may be political or liberal in their orientation or conservative. They need to be the first ones to speak up. And mostly, we just need to be able to express mutual concern and solidarity for each other, because they come after us first. And Jenna, history has taught us that we're never the last.
Yeah, absolutely. It has. Rabbi Cooper, thank you so much for joining us this evening. It's great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna. All the best.
When we come back, why students are pushing back over vaccine and mask mandates. Two vaccinations plus a booster, and you still may be banned from eating at restaurants, even outdoors. That restriction and others are what many students are facing on college campuses due to the Omicron surge. And some of the students are pushing back. George Thomas explains.
For supposedly smart people, they're acting in a very unscientific and stupid fashion.
That's Senator Rand Paul's take on what's happening today on a growing number of college campuses. Take this quote, for example. Forget making college memories at Yale. They want to control every aspect of your life, even after 2 vaccine doses and booster, LOL, wrote Blair Cooper on the Yale Daily News' Facebook page after the university announced this month that it's banning students from eating at local restaurants, even outdoors, to try and cut COVID numbers. At Princeton, fully vaccinated students were told in December they couldn't even leave the county unless they were on a sports team. And at Johns Hopkins University, students are required to be triple vaxxed, wear N95s or double mask, and test twice weekly. Dr. Marty McCary, a Johns Hopkins surgeon and professor, weighed in, writing, "At these institutions of higher learning and thousands more, science is supposedly held in the highest esteem. So where is the scientific support for masking outdoors? Where is the scientific support for constantly testing fully vaccinated young people? Where is the support for the confinement of asymptomatic young people who test positive for a virus to which they are already immune on a campus of other immune people? The data simply do not justify any of it." Senator Paul couldn't agree more.
I think the mask mandates are wrong-headed and unscientific, but also these draconian things that they're asking of students. I think it's unfair to the students. But really, parents need to wake up. Quit sending your kids to Yale and Princeton if they are a bunch of authoritarians.
As Omicron continues to surge and universities double down on COVID restrictions, Senator Paul and others say the science simply isn't there to justify the restrictions.
Under 18, the death rate's about 1 in a million. And above age 80, it's about 1,000 times that. It's ridiculous to apply the same precautions that we are prescribing for the elderly to the young.
The latest CDC numbers show more than 2,100 people between the ages of 15 to 24 died of COVID in the last 12 months, while 1,900 people died of pneumonia in the same age group.
Those age groups, it's less deadly than the seasonal flu. So for the seasonal flu, we've never mandated testing. We've never mandated masks. We've never mandated inoculation for the younger folks.
It's why Tice Pat and 14 of his fellow students are suing Ohio University over their COVID protocols, including their vaccination mandate, claiming it's discriminatory.
You don't have the vaccine and you got an approved exemption. You're required to test weekly. You're required to do things that other people that did get the vaccine aren't required to do, and that's illegal under Ohio law.
Pat argues that OU's rules violate both state law and the Ohio Constitution by not allowing students to exercise their consent to medical treatment.
The best thing we can do for students is give them the choice. Putting these blanket orders over everybody and saying everybody has to wear a mask, to get a vaccine, and take a test, and that's the only way to beat COVID, is anti-science and honestly dangerous.
Warner Mendenhall, Tice's lawyer, has filed similar lawsuits against other Ohio universities. His clients have described to him what happens when students test positive on some campuses.
Whether or not they're symptomatic, if they test positive on the test, their key cards are shut off. So they can no longer go to class, go to their dorm room, go to the dining hall, go to the gym, go to the library. They have to report to a COVID dorm where there is not proper food or water, or they can go home. And that is just wrong.
Molly Noble, a parent of an OU student, has joined the class action lawsuit.
They need to start looking at the physical and emotional and psychological effects that this is having on this population.
Surveys show the pandemic continues to have a major impact on students' mental health.
Society is impacted by this pandemic, and we don't yet know the total outcomes of what this is going to do for any generation.
Mendenhall says it's time for the country to prepare for a potential new reality, that the virus is here to stay, and that campuses should also rethink its battle lines going forward.
It is not a controllable thing. So we need to let that whole story go. We have to live with this. We have to live with this illness.
I do think that within a couple of months, so many people will have had this new variant that immunity will be so widespread that hopefully we'll be able to get beyond this pandemic.
George Thomas, CBN News.
Still ahead, from malfunction to masterpiece. The national anthem at the AFC Championship goes viral. The memorable moment at last night's game. Finally tonight, the Cincinnati Bengals are headed to the Super Bowl after a 27-24 win in Sunday's AFC Championship game. The Bengals' stunning comeback over the Kansas City Chiefs wasn't the only unforgettable moment of the night, though. When R&B singer Ashanti experienced some technical issues with her microphone during the national anthem, the crowd at Arrowhead Stadium was quick to fill in. Cincinnati will face off against the Los Angeles Rams on February 13th, the Bengals' first Super Bowl in almost 3 decades, and it should be a great game. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Have a great evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.